In 1513, a disgraced diplomat sat alone in a farmhouse outside Florence. He had been tortured, hung by his wrists until his shoulders nearly tore from their sockets, accused of conspiracy against the Medici family, the most powerful dynasty in Italy. They released him, but they broke him first. And in that broken silence, Niccolò Machiavelli did something dangerous. He wrote a book. Not a book of philosophy, not a book of morals, a manual, a step-by-step guide on how to seize power, how to keep it, and how to crush anyone who tries to take it from you. He called it The Prince. He never published it in his lifetime. He gave it as a gift, a private letter to Lorenzo de' Medici, the very family that had destroyed him. Why would a tortured man hand his enemies the keys to the kingdom? Here is the answer most people miss. Machiavelli wasn't teaching the Medici how to rule. He was exposing how rulers think. He was handing you, yes, you, a map of the battlefield you walk on every single day. The office, the family, the relationship, the negotiation. By the end of this video, you will understand the 15 rules that have governed every king, dictator, CEO, and quiet manipulator for 500 years. This is not history. This is a mirror. You have felt this before. That moment when someone smiled at you, agreed with you, and then, behind closed doors, worked to undermine everything you built. That moment when you played by the rules and someone who didn't play by the rules won. That creeping suspicion that there is a second game being played. One you were never invited to learn. You are not paranoid. You are awake. The world is not run by the righteous. It is run by those who understand how power actually moves. And Machiavelli, writing from the ashes of his own destruction, mapped that movement with surgical precision. But here is what most people get wrong about The Prince. They think it is a book about evil. It is not. It is a book about reality. Machiavelli did not invent these rules. He observed them. He watched popes and generals, merchants and assassins. He saw what worked. He saw what got men killed. And he wrote it down, not to celebrate cruelty, but to name it, to drag it into the light. Because a rule you do not know still governs you. So let us walk through the manual. 15 principles. Some will disturb you. Some will liberate you. All of them are operating in your life right now, whether you see them or not. This is the line everyone quotes, and almost everyone misunderstands. Machiavelli is not saying cruelty is good. He is making a cold observation about human nature. Love is conditional, but fear is constant. A person who loves you will abandon you when loving you becomes inconvenient, but a person who fears the consequences of betraying you will hesitate, even when betrayal would benefit them. Think about it. The boss everyone likes, but no one respects. Their orders dissolve the moment they leave the room. But the boss who is fair, competent, and dangerous when crossed, their word becomes law even in their absence. Therefore, Machiavelli's advice is not, be a tyrant. It is this: do not rely on affection to hold your position. Affection is a gift. Respect built on demonstrated consequence is a structure. But, and this is the part people skip, Machiavelli immediately warns, avoid being hated. Fear without hatred is control. Fear with hatred is a countdown to your own destruction. The distinction is everything. In Machiavelli's Italy, cities hired mercenary armies, condottieri, to fight their wars. It was convenient. No need to arm your own citizens. No need to risk your own sons. But Machiavelli watched those mercenaries switch sides mid-battle. He watched them prolong wars for profit. He watched them hold their employers hostage. His conclusion was absolute. Those who fight for money will fight for whoever pays more. Translate this to the modern world. The people you pay to be loyal, the consultants, the contractors, the flatterers on your payroll, their loyalty expires with the invoice. But the people who share your mission, who have invested their own identity in your success, they fight even when the money stops. Therefore, build your inner circle from believers, not mercenaries. Pay people well, but select for alignment, not availability. This is where Machiavelli turned stomachs. But listen to the logic. If you must do harm, fire employees, cut partnerships, make enemies. Do it all at once, swiftly, and then stop. Why? Because prolonged cruelty creates prolonged fear, and prolonged fear becomes hatred. But a single, decisive act, followed by stability and generosity, allows wounds to heal. People remember the peace more than the pain. Compare this to the leader who delivers bad news in drips. A layoff this month, another next month, a pay cut in the spring. Each act reopens the wound. Each act keeps the organization in a state of dread. Loyalty collapses because there is no safe ground to stand on. Therefore, if the fire must burn, let it burn hot and fast. Then, plant in the ash. This is the inverse. If cruelty should be swift, generosity should be slow. A single massive gift is forgotten within weeks, but a steady stream of smaller benefits keeps gratitude alive. Each act of generosity refreshes the memory of your kindness. Think of the employer who gives a massive year-end bonus versus the employer who offers small, unexpected rewards throughout the year. A day off here, a public recognition there, a personal note of thanks. The second employer occupies more space in the employee's mind. The relationship feels ongoing, not transactional. Therefore, distribute your benefits like a gardener waters a plant, a little, consistently, over time. Machiavelli insisted that a prince should never stop preparing for conflict, even when no conflict exists. Not because war is desirable, but because peace is temporary, and the unprepared are destroyed when the season changes. This means in your career, in your finances, in your relationships, build reserves. Develop skills you do not currently need. Map the terrain of potential threats. Understand your vulnerabilities before your enemies do. The time to learn how to fight is not when the sword is already at your throat. Here is where Machiavelli earns his reputation for cynicism. He writes that a prince must appear merciful, faithful, humane, religious, and honest. But he must also be prepared to act against those virtues when necessity demands. This sounds like hypocrisy, but Machiavelli is making a subtler point. People judge by appearances because they cannot see your intentions. You will be evaluated by what you seem to be, not by what you are. Therefore, manage perception deliberately. This does not mean lie constantly. It means understand that your image is a tool, and tools require maintenance. The leader who is privately brilliant but publicly inarticulate will lose to the leader who is publicly compelling. Unfair? Yes. True? Also yes. Machiavelli warns that courts and modern organizations are infested with people who tell leaders what they want to hear. The danger is not just bad advice. The danger is isolation from reality. The flatterer builds a wall of comfort around the prince, and behind that wall, the real world shifts, threatens, and eventually collapses the throne. Therefore, create structures that allow honest feedback. Reward those who tell you uncomfortable truths. Punish, or at least do not promote, those whose only skill is agreement. The most dangerous room is the one where everyone is nodding. This surprises people. Wouldn't walls protect you? Machiavelli argues that a prince who relies on fortresses rather than the loyalty of his people has already lost. The fortress is a symbol of distrust. It says, "I fear you," and fear breeds resentment. More practically, walls can be breached, but a population that loves its ruler, or at least fears its ruler's enemies more than the ruler, is a living defense. Therefore, invest in relationships, not barriers. The leader who hides behind policies, bureaucracy, and distance will find those walls turned against them. When two powers go to war, the temptation is to stay neutral, to wait and see, to avoid making enemies. Machiavelli calls this the path to ruin. Why? Because the winner will not thank you for your non-support, and the loser will blame you for not helping them. You end the conflict with two enemies instead of one ally. Therefore, when you must choose, choose. Commit. A decisive ally is valued. A cautious fence-sitter is despised by everyone. Machiavelli personifies fortune as a woman and, in the language of his time, says she must be beaten and struck down to be controlled. Set aside the troubling metaphor. The underlying point is this: passivity does not protect you from chaos. The world will act upon you whether you act or not. Therefore, move first. Shape events rather than reacting to them. Audacity, even when it fails, creates more options than timidity. The lion cannot protect himself from traps. The fox cannot protect himself from wolves. Therefore, be both. Use cunning to detect deception. Use strength to punish those who would destroy you. The purely strong are outmaneuvered. The purely clever are overpowered. Only the synthesis survives. When you disarm those beneath you, you signal distrust, and distrust creates the very disloyalty you feared. But more importantly, an armed population is an invested population. They have something to defend. They have skin in the game. Therefore, give your people ownership. In a company, this means equity, voice, and participation. In a family, this means shared decision-making. The more invested people are in the outcome, the harder they will fight for it. Machiavelli understood something that modern public relations has only recently formalized. Perception persists longer than the events that created it. Once you are seen as weak, you will be treated as weak, even if you become strong. Once you are seen as treacherous, every action will be interpreted through that lens. Therefore, protect your reputation more carefully than your treasury. Reputations, once lost, are almost impossible to rebuild. The prince who succeeds with boldness in one era may fail with boldness in another. The world changes. Methods that worked yesterday may destroy you tomorrow. Machiavelli laments that most men cannot change their nature. The cautious man remains cautious even when boldness is needed. The aggressive man remains aggressive even when patience is required. Therefore, study the times. What worked before is not a law, it is a data point. The survivor is the one who evolves. This is the darkest truth in the book. Machiavelli writes that the world does not care about your methods, it cares about your outcomes. The prince who wins through cruelty is celebrated. The prince who loses with honor is forgotten. This is not an endorsement, it is a warning. You live in a world that rewards results and rationalizes the process afterward. Therefore, do not expect virtue to protect you. Virtue is beautiful, but competence is survival. So what is the prince, really? It is not a celebration of evil. It is not a guide for psychopaths. It is a mirror held up to power, not the power of kings, but the power dynamics that operate in every room you enter. Machiavelli was not trying to create tyrants. He was trying to reveal them, to show the tortured, the exiled, and the powerless how the game is actually played. Because ignorance is not innocence. Ignorance is vulnerability. The rules we just walked through, they are already governing your workplace, your relationships, your industry. The question is not whether they apply. The question is whether you see them clearly enough to navigate. And here is the fire at the center of the book, the one Machiavelli himself was burned by. Knowing the rules does not mean you must use them cruelly, but it does mean you can recognize when they are being used against you. That is the gift a broken man left behind in a cold farmhouse 500 years ago. A manual, a mirror, a warning. Power is not good or evil. It is a fire, and fire can warm a home or burn it to the ground. The difference is in the hands that hold it. If this video made you think, if it showed you a pattern you hadn't seen before, then we've done what we set out to do. Subscribe if you want to see the next one. The game was always being played. Now, at least, you know the rules.